Okay, I built a kitchen galley for the Sprinter out of cardboard. So yeah, I built this out of cardboard just to see how it was going to fit and make sure it was going to work for us. What made that possible was getting a 2-seat bench here for the first row passenger seats. So now we're able to walk through this area and use this for a galley. Now let's go build the real one. Alright, but first I modeled my kitchen galley up in 3D and then laid it out to make sure it would all fit on a single piece of 4x plywood. Then I headed to Lowe's and got some black stain and the sink I was going to use and some cabinet hardware and a piece of 4x8 3/4-inch plywood maple. I had Lowe's go ahead and cut the vertical cuts because I figured they'd be able to do it straighter on this saw than I could on my table saw at home. There's my 2D plans there. Also, it made it easier to get the pieces home. I grabbed some liquid nails to glue it all together. And I made my first cut here using the table saw and a saw guide because the cut was bigger than my table saw could handle. You can see that didn't quite work as planned. It put in a little bit of a bind there right at the end. So I gave up on that idea and just used the saw guide and a circular saw. I used the table saw for the smaller pieces because I can use a fence on these smaller pieces and square them up. Had to use a jigsaw to finish the corners, especially where I was cutting out the cabinet doors. Finally, I used a router to router the dados in, and again I used that same saw guide for the router. We had another big trip planned, and I really wanted to get this galley done before we left, so I think I had like 2 days to do it. So we're kind of racing the clock here. I was really happy with the saw guide. Everything lined up pretty straight when all was said and done. So I'd highly recommend one of those. You don't necessarily need a table saw or even a Dado blade for your table saw. You can do it with a router and a skill saw when you have a saw guide. So here I'm going to give you a close-up of what the dados look like. They're about half the thickness of the piece of 3/4-inch ply. All right, now it's time to lay everything out, line it up, clamp it together. Make sure I made all the cuts right, that everything will fit. And wouldn't you know it, it didn't fit. I made a mistake. I'll explain that in a minute. All right, take two. So I had no idea how much that inner wall curves in. See, I didn't even see that. My cardboard mock-up probably just squished in there, so I didn't even notice it. So I'd take another 1.5 inches off of the width here to get it fit. But that's okay. I mean, I was just going to maybe put one of those little fire extinguishers or a carbon monoxide detector or something there anyway. Okay, here we are using the template that came with the sink to mark where the sink goes. And then we'll cut a hole using the jigsaw for the sink to drop in. I decided to use a couple of the pieces of maple that were going to be left over anyway from that 4x8 sheet of plywood. Could have gone with big butcher block, but I just didn't want to make that kind of investment for this first go. I can always replace it later. Here we are applying glue to our dados, and we're going to reassemble the galley and use some 16 gauge finish nails to nail it all together. If any of you are interested in the plans for this galley and would like to make one of your own, check out the description. I'll leave some instructions on how you could acquire those plans for a very nominal sum. Okay, it's time to sand all the joints down, make sure everything lines up, and then we stain it with that black stain we got at the hardware store. This stain was interesting. I probably put it on a little thick. It took a while to dry. All right, here we are the next morning, installing the sink. You can see I've already prepped it with the hand pump faucet. Here's Ruby checking out my handiwork. Where? Good girl. These fangs are supposed to dig into the bottom of the countertop, aren't digging in, so I had to bend them down. Here we are installed in the van. You can see the black stain on my hands. Okay, this is what I ended up doing for my freshwater and my wastewater. I don't know if you can see that very good. The sink was a lot lower, a lot deeper than I'd really planned on originally. So it comes way down here into a P-trap and then makes a transition with a Fernco fitting into this flexible hose. Alright, I don't even know if you're going to be able to see what I'm doing here. It's getting dark and don't have a lot of light in here. So I've got this side of the cabinet door installed, and I'm working on this one. One little trick you can use to line your hinges is to do that. Put them like that, drill the top hole, put a screw in it, and then drill the other two holes. Okay, this is the finished product for now. I'm gonna put a shelf here so I can put my camp stove on this extended countertop. But other than that, I think we're done for now. So we got a little cutting board cover. Got your water pump. Oh, I guess a dish strainer. On a strainer. I do admit, going down bumpy roads, this makes a little bit of noise. I might have to find a way to kind of weight it down so it doesn't do that. I don't know if you can really see in here, but got our doors. Got magnet plates. Got a 10-liter freshwater container and the same for the gray water. The sink I got was like deeper than I originally planned on. I was hoping to get some 5-gallon jerry cans to go in here, but sink was too deep for that, so these 10-liter ones, but they'll work for what we're doing. And then they're tied down for transportation. I don't know if you can see any of that. Anyway, pretty happy with the result. All of this out of. One more thing I forgot to mention. That's how I bolted it down, just a U-bolt around that seat track there. It's held it in place really great so far. With the galley done, we hit the road the next day for Glacier National Park. I'll leave you with some pictures from that trip. If you found this video helpful, please give it a big like. We'll see you in the next one.